The first time Renee sensed the change, it wasn't in the words they said, it was in the silence between them. She stood in the church fellowship hall, balancing a paper plate of lukewarm casserole, her smile practiced and polite. Around her, clusters of women laughed over shared recipes, their voices rising and falling like a familiar hymn. Renee adjusted the strap of her dress and took a step toward them. The conversation stuttered. For half a second, the circle tightened, shoulders shifting almost imperceptibly. Then Sister Martha turned, her smile stretching too wide. "Renee, we didn't see you there." The lie hung in the air, thin as the steam from the green bean casserole. "The choir sounded beautiful today," Renee offered, her voice steady. "Oh." Martha blinked, as if surprised she'd noticed. "Yes, well, we've been practicing that arrangement for months." Her gaze flickered past Renee's shoulder, searching for an escape. "Excuse me, I think the coffee needs refilling." The circle closed again before Martha had even stepped away. Renee's fingers tightened around her plate. 5 years ago, they'd saved her a seat at this table. 5 years ago, she'd been the first they asked to lead the Easter prayer. Now, she was an afterthought, a ghost in her own church. She carried her untouched food to the trash and slipped out the side door. The courtyard was empty save for the rose bushes, their petals bruised purple in the evening light. Renee sat on a stone bench, the chill seeping through her dress. From inside, the muffled sounds of fellowship drifted through the stained-glass windows. Laughter, the clink of silverware, someone's off-key rendition of Blessed Assurance. She pulled out her phone. One new message. "Andre, need an early pickup?" Her thumb hovered over the keyboard. She could say yes. He'd be here in 10 minutes, no questions asked. But leaving early meant admitting defeat, and Renee Williams didn't surrender. Not to gossip. Not to sideways glances. Not even to the slow, suffocating erosion of belonging. She typed back, "I'm fine. Home soon." A shadow fell across the screen. "You always did love these roses." Pastor Harris stood beside her, his suit jacket draped over one arm. Up close, the lines around his eyes looked deeper than they had from the pulpit. "They're resilient," Renee said, "even when everyone forgets to water them." The pastor sighed. "Renee." He hesitated, choosing his words like stepping stones. "I hope you know you're always welcome here." The kindness in his voice made it worse. Because he meant it, just not enough to call out the whispers. Not enough to ask why the women's Bible study roster mysteriously shrank every time she signed up. "Thank you, Pastor," she said, standing. "I should get home." Her heels clicked against the pavement as she walked to the parking lot. Behind her, the church doors creaked open, spilling out a ribbon of light and the pastor's parting words. "We're, still raising funds for the roof repair. If you know anyone who might." Renee didn't turn around. "I'll keep that in mind." The drive home was quiet. She rolled down the window, letting the wind tug at the pins in her hair. The church's steeple shrank in the rearview mirror, its cross gleaming under the streetlights, a symbol she still loved, even when it didn't love her back. Andre was waiting on the porch when she pulled in, 2 mugs of tea steaming beside him. He took one look at her face and said nothing. Just handed her the chamomile and pressed a kiss to her temple. Inside, the house smelled like basil and the jazz records Andre loved. Normal. Renee set down her purse. "They need $18,000 for the roof." Andre sipped his tea. She studied his profile, the quiet strength in his jaw, the way his thumb tapped rhythmically against the mug. He'd stopped asking if she wanted to find another church. Stopped pointing out the way her Sunday shoes gathered dust by Monday. Some hurts ran too deep for words. Renee leaned into his shoulder. Outside, the first drops of rain tapped against the window, gentle, persistent, like the truth neither of them needed to say aloud. The church's roof wouldn't hold much longer. André had learned long ago that some silences were louder than shouts. He sat at the kitchen table, fingers tracing the rim of his coffee mug as Renee moved through their morning routine, pinning up her hair, smoothing the wrinkles from her dress, the quiet sigh she always let out before stepping into church shoes. "You don't have to go," he said, not for the first time. Renee's reflection smiled at him in the hallway mirror. "And let them win?" The words hung between them, sharp as the scent of her perfume. André watched her slip a Bible into her purse, the leather cover worn soft from years of use. That book had been her grandmother's. It meant more to her than any building ever could. When the front door clicked shut, André pulled out his phone. The church's donation page glared up at him. $18,325 still needed for roof repairs. His thumb hovered over the keyboard. Memories flickered. Renee's face when she'd come home last month, her voice hollow. "They forgot to assign me a dish for the potluck again." The way Elder Thompson had eyed him at their wedding reception, murmuring, "Mixed marriages take extra grace," to no one in particular. The screen blurred. André had spent his life mastering patience. He'd swallowed slights in boardrooms, smiled through microaggressions at PDA meetings, let sideways glances roll off his back like rain. But this, the slow suffocation of the woman he loved, was a storm he wouldn't weather silently. He entered the amount. $18,325. In the memo field, he typed 7 words. "In honor of my wife's faithfulness." Rain tapped against the windows when Renee returned, her shoulders damp, her smile brittle. André met her at the door with a towel. "How was the sermon?" "About forgiveness." She laughed, the sound cracking down the middle. "Convenient." He followed her to the kitchen, watching as she dumped her purse on the counter. A bulletin fluttered out. "Roof fund urgently needed," screaming in bold font. "Pastor made another announcement today," she said, filling the kettle too forcefully. Sister Elaine cried actual tears about losing our spiritual home. André leaned against the doorway. "What did you pray for?" The kettle screeched. Renee stared at the steam, her voice barely audible. "That I'd stop hoping they'd change." That night, as rain drummed against the leaking church roof 3 miles away, André pressed a kiss to his sleeping wife's temple and opened his laptop one last time. The sanctuary hummed with its usual post-scripture chatter when Pastor Harris cleared his throat. A hush fell as he adjusted his glasses, fingers trembling against the pulpit. "Friends, I have extraordinary news." Renee barely glanced up from her bulletin, expecting another plea for donations. "Our roof fund has been fully met." A collective gasp. Elder Thompson's head snapped up. Sister Elaine dropped her fan. "The donor wished to remain anonymous," the pastor continued, "but after much prayer, they've allowed us to share one detail." He paused, eyes finding Renee in the third pew. It was given in honor of Renee Williams, by her husband, André. The silence was volcanic. Renee's hands froze around the bulletin, the paper crumpling in her grip. Heat flooded her cheeks, not from shame, but from the dizzying realization André had done this without telling her. Across the aisle, Sister Martha's mouth hung open. "André." But he never even. The back doors creaked open. Sunlight spilled across the hardwood as André stepped inside, dressed in the same navy suit he'd worn to their wedding. The air crackled as he walked down the aisle, not with triumph, but with terrible, quiet grace. Murmurs erupted. All that money? Why wouldn't he say something sooner? After how we treated. Pastor Harris raised a hand. "André, would you? That is, we'd like to thank you properly." André stopped beside Renee's pew. When he spoke, his voice carried like a bell. This was never about thanks. He took Renee's hand, helping her stand. "It's about what happens when love gets louder than whispers." As they walked out together, the stained-glass saints seemed to lean from their windows, watching. Behind them, the church roof groaned, not from rain, but from the weight of a lesson finally learned. The following Sunday, Renee woke to the scent of coffee and jazz floating from the kitchen. André stood at the stove, humming as he flipped pancakes, his Sunday ritual, even though he hadn't stepped foot in a church in years. She hesitated in the doorway. "You're coming today." It wasn't a question. André slid a golden pancake onto her plate. "If you want me to." The church parking lot was fuller than usual. Heads turned as they walked in together, André's hand resting lightly on the small of Renee's back. Whispers slithered through the pews. "That's him. Paid for the whole roof. After how we treated her." Renee kept her chin high, but her fingers trembled as she opened her hymnal. Pastor Harris's sermon was on forgiveness. His eyes darted to André twice. After the final hymn, Sister Elaine blocked their path to the door. Her knuckles were white around her purse strap. "Renee," she blurted. "The choir. We'd love your help with the Easter program." The words hung in the air like a confession. Behind Elaine, the other women held their breath. Renee studied Elaine's face, the too bright smile, the sweat beading at her hairline. She thought of all the Sundays she'd stood alone by the roses, all the potlucks where her casserole went untouched. "Thank you," she said softly. "But I've already committed elsewhere." Elaine's smile cracked. "Where?" André answered, his voice warm as the sun through stained glass. "The shelter downtown. They serve meals on Easter." As they walked to the car, the church ladies clustered on the steps, their whispers chasing them like dead leaves. "You okay?" André asked when they were out of earshot. Renee took a deep breath. The air smelled of rain and fresh-cut grass. Somewhere nearby, a bird sang. "I thought I'd feel angrier," she admitted. André opened her car door. "Grace isn't about them. It's about you sleeping easy at night." She touched the cross at her throat, the one he'd given her. The one that meant more than any building ever could. "Take me home," she said. As they drove away, the church's new roof gleamed in the rearview mirror, perfect and unbroken. Easter morning dawned bright and cloudless. Renee stood at the shelter's stainless steel counter, sleeves rolled up, hair tied back with the same ribbon she once wore to church. Around her, the kitchen hummed, volunteers cracking eggs, teenagers stacking trays, the shelter director calling out orders like a choir director. André manned the griddle, his jazz playlist blending with the clatter of pans. Every few minutes, he'd catch Renee's eye and wink. "Table 4 needs extra bacon," a volunteer called. Renee loaded a tray. As she pushed through the swinging doors, her breath caught. Sister Elaine stood in the serving line. Elaine's patent leather pumps were scuffed from the sidewalk. She clutched a foil-wrapped dish like a shield. "I brought." She thrust the dish forward. "Scalloped potatoes. Your favorite." Renee stared at the familiar Corningware, the same dish Elaine had brought to every church potluck for a decade. The one Renee's recipe was always, accidentally, left off the sign-up sheet to avoid. The shelter director eyed the crowd building behind Elaine. "Ma'am, you can leave donations at—" "No." Renee took the dish. "Let her through." Elaine trailed her to the kitchen, her gaze darting from André's easy smile to the tattooed line cook cracking jokes with Renee. "You're really not coming back," Elaine said suddenly. Renee stirred the gravy. "I never left my faith. Just the place that forgot what it meant." A crash echoed from the dining hall, a dropped tray, laughter, quick apologies. Elaine flinched at the noise. "Pastor's retiring," she blurted. "After the roof thing, he kept saying we'd missed the point." Her voice dropped. "They voted me to lead the women's ministry." Renee studied her, the trembling hands, the smudged mascara. Elaine had always been the first to whisper, the last to repent. "Then lead," Renee said, handing her an apron. "Starting here." By noon, Elaine's designer blouse was splattered with grease. She'd cried twice, once when a veteran called her sister instead of ma'am, again when André silently refilled her coffee. As Renee wiped down tables, she overheard Elaine on the payphone. "Cancel the Easter luncheon. No, bring everything to the shelter on Main. Yes, the one with a pause. Because it's where Jesus would be." That evening, Renee and André sat on their porch, listening to the distant church bells echo across the city. The scent of scalloped potatoes still lingered in the house. "Think she'll change?" André asked, peeling the label off his beer. Renee watched a sparrow land on their fence. "Some will. Some won't." She leaned into his shoulder. "But we did." Inside, the answering machine blinked. The pastor's voice had called twice, once to thank them, once to ask if they'd consider helping with the shelter's new partnership program. They hadn't called back yet. Some silences, Renee had learned, spoke louder than sermons.